Today I observed the student I've been observing. I'll call him M. He's a fourth grader, and he has autism, and he spends quite a lot of time in the resource room at his elementary school, which is the formal name is the Specialized Academic Instruction Room. But he used to spend a lot more time in the general ed classroom, but over the years they're realizing that his skills are much lower than where they need to be. So he comes in for language arts and math instruction in the resource room and spends time with the general ed population at recess and for PE and music and lunchtime. And so today when I observed him, I was looking for what behavioral characteristics he was showing, and I noticed that he repeated words and phrases very often, as I often see him do. But other than that, a lot of the things I was expecting to see, I didn't. So he did use quite a lot of eye contact, both with his teacher, or not both, but with his teacher, his paraprofessional, and with me. And he was a lot more social than usual. He was making conversation with his paraprofessional quite a bit. It was often focused around a single subject of airplanes, or actually airplanes, drones, and trains, so transportation systems. But he seemed really interested in engaging her in conversation, or maybe more in talking to her than hearing her response. But a little bit he seemed to kind of want to get a rise out of her. He started, doing some gross talk about picking his nose and seeing how she would respond to that. So he seemed like he wanted to engage her and interact with her, which was different from what you would expect as a classic characteristic of someone with an autism spectrum disorder. So what I observed was he spent the beginning of the time I was there walking around the room, kind of wandering with his airplane that he had built with little clicking blocks. And he seemed happy and relaxed. And then when the paraprofessional touched the timer to give him a 2-minute warning that they were going to work, he got really frustrated. He didn't want her touching the timer. And then then when it was time to switch over to work on his language arts, he really didn't want to put down his plane. He really didn't want to make that transition. So that was more classic of somebody with an autism spectrum disorder, not wanting to switch activities. And so after she got him to put down the airplane, she had him go check his schedule, and he has those little cards where they are on his schedule, and he moves them over as he completes them. So he saw that it was time to do language arts, and so they started working on that, which took quite a long time to get started. He moved around all the chairs first, and then he had to pick through all the pencils, and he did not want to do the work or read the work. And so every step, I would say, was required 3 or 4 prompts from the paraprofessional to get him to start working. He sat on the wobble chair, which he seems to really enjoy, and he spends a lot of time leaning and kind of rolling over on the table with his torso. He, as he kind of got warmed up and did more work, it was going smoother and smoother. He didn't need as many prompts. He started moving from one sentence to the next, which was nice to see. And then during his transition time, so when he was done with that, then he gets a 5-minute break between that and his next activity. So he had his break, and during which he played with the airplane that he had built, and he was mildly upset that the timer didn't go off to end his break because he's used to that cue. But it wasn't a giant deal. There's no meltdown or anything. And then he rather than going straight to his next activity after his break, he had a snack. I guess he doesn't eat breakfast, so he eats a snack at around 9:15. And he definitely rocked while eating, not in a real disruptive way, but it was noticeable. And that was the time when he was engaging his paraprofessional in conversation, and eventually he started mimicking her, and so she reminded him about his behavior and how he earns rewards, and that seemed to help him tone it down a little bit. He really likes talking about airplanes, drones, trains, so he spent quite a lot of time doing that. And what I saw was the paraprofessional using gentle encouragement and reward reminders. So his system that he has in place for behavior is a token system, and so it's based in positive behavior supports. So he has a sheet, and it has on the back Velcro strips and little tags with Thomas the Tank Engine trains, and then on the other side he has these different squares, and so when he completes a task, he takes one off the back and moves it to the front, and then when he fills in the front chart, he gets to take an iPad break. So the break that I saw today was not an iPad break, it was just a transition break, but once he fills up the front of his chart, he's able to take an iPad break, which is really desirable for him, and usually he earns 1 to 2 of those breaks a day. So those are the rewards that come more often. And then the longer term rewards is the special ed teacher has set up a store in her room where she goes to the dollar store and fills up a cabinet, and then they all have big manila envelopes tacked to the wall that they've decorated, and when they show appropriate behavior, they get $1 to put into their wallet. It's a Monopoly dollar to put into their wallet, and then on Fridays the store opens and they can go shopping with the money they've earned through the week. So to help him stay on track, there's gentle reminders and prompting, and then there's also these rewards for him to look forward to, both in short term with the iPad breaks, and then with longer term where they can build up over the course of the week, and then he gets that reward at the end of the week. So I saw these interventions as being effective when his paraprofessional would mention, hey, is this how you earn a reward? He would not necessarily change his behavior immediately, but he would pause, and you could see him thinking about it, and most of the time he would change his behavior, at least in the direction of where she wanted it to go. And I think that it's effective because he likes it. I think he likes earning his iPad time, and he likes the store. I think that's a fun, festive event for the kids. And I think he likes the routine. I think he understands how the system works because they've had it in place for a while, and I think that makes him feel comfortable knowing that if he does one thing, that the reward or the response will be the same every time. And so he knows what to expect, and he knows the kind of parameters of how he can behave, and the consequences, positive consequences for his appropriate behavior. So that is about it for the discussion of his behavioral characteristics, the interventions being used. I do think that they are effective, and I think they're effective because he enjoys them and they're implemented. The structure is set up really well.